Welcome to On Point with Tim Murphy. I'm Tim Murphy, and this is Joanie McGuffin. Hi, Joanie McGuffin.
Tim.
Joanie is the executive director of the Lake Superior Watershed Conservancy, which is a mouthful, but and I was unfamiliar with it up until maybe a couple of years ago. We did a silent auction and stuff with our friend Peter Gagnon.
Yes.
And we raised some money for the Conservancy, and what an amazing, not just organization, the work that you do, the volunteers that you have, the connections you have around the entire Great Lakes, incredible. How did this come to happen? Tell me about the story, the history of the Conservancy itself, Joanie.
Well, if we start back in 2004 actually is when we founded the Conservancy, and we founded it on a huge geography of the whole watershed of Lake Superior. Our mission vision is to be an international model for freshwater protection. What better way to do that than on the largest expanse of fresh water on this planet, at the head of the Great Lakes, which has the cleanest and most beautiful, I would say, part of the Great Lakes, in the heart of Turtle Island, North America.
Turtle Island, which is North America, where our ancestors came to the land of the First Nations for the Indigenous people, right?
Yes.
So, on the grand scale of things, let's take a look at the whole world, Mike. Show me the whole world. There we are. Okay, so we are. You can see Lake Superior, how big it is on that map alone, and then when we zoom in, there it is. Yes.
If we put a line around the watershed here of the Great Lakes, it would be the third richest country in the world because of this source of fresh water. And so, and it's bordered by the states and then the province of Ontario. And here we are. This watershed outline shows the geography that the Lake Superior Watershed Conservancy is concerned with. So obviously the health and well-being of the rivers and the forests that flow into this Great Lake impact the quality of this ecosystem.
So your work is specifically Superior, obviously, which is why you're the Lake Superior Watershed Conservancy. Are there similar organizations for the other Great Lakes?
I don't know any other organization that's a model for an entire watershed like this, but we have many partners and folks that are doing amazing ecological work around the lake. So I like to say that we're really a resource hub, and that's what we're growing to be, so that we can connect, as we talk today, about all the different ways that we have to approach this protection of fresh water. We just want to see people connecting more. We need to collect and collaborate and cooperate in Northern Ontario, and in fact the northern states, because we have a relatively small population on a very vast landscape at the heart of North America, with a resource that is for the world today, the gold. Fresh water. And it's very challenging to face the challenges we face with protecting fresh water.
I just interviewed Joanne Robertson, who is the author of the children's book, The Water Walker. And she was inspired, actually, to write the book by a chief who said that if we keep going the way we're going, an ounce of water is going to be worth as much as an ounce of gold, because we have not been doing a great job of protecting our waters. You're also talking about not just protection, but also combining ecology with economy and culture and exercise, personal health and well-being. Yep. It really does make sense when you look at it from that perspective, and all of the communities that are connected by the interconnectivity of the water. Yes. How that can bring us all together. So when you've spent a fair amount of time on Lake Superior, you and your husband Gary have become quite well known for your photography and the beautiful pictures you brought back from your excursions.
I would like to say that as people watch the imagery today, they will be seeing all Gary's photographs.
This is Gary. We're going to show.
He's always behind the camera, has been for decades now. So
back in 1989, before there was the Watershed Conservancy, you were already out there for months at a time. You did one circumnavigation. You spent how long on the water?
We spent 3 months paddling around Lake Superior.
We've got some pictures of that coming up.
That journey gave us a really unique perspective of this watershed, the amazing ecosystem, the landforms like the sleeping giant that we see in the northwest, the cliffs along the Minnesota shoreline, the Apostle Islands, the Keweenaw land, the big sweeping sand beaches and terraces and islands of the north shore of Lake
Oh,
Superior.
Joanie, look at
this ecosystem.
Is that a real picture?
Yeah, that's a real picture.
Did Gary take that?
Oh yes, all Gary's photography. He's got an amazing eye, and it's the spirit. I think he draws out in his photographs the spirit of this region, which is very, very powerful. And
Look
why
at where
shouldn't
we
it
live.
be?
Look at where we live.
We're 3/4 water, Tim. We're 3/4 are water. Why this iconic, and I would argue that it's 1,000 times more valuable than gold, because we can't live without water.
Powerful indeed. We'll be back with more Joanie McGuffin and the Lake Superior Watershed Conservancy right after this On Point with Tim Murphy. Stay with us. So Joanie, you have this wonderful resource, and we need to educate people about it, right? And so you have the program called the Shoreline Stewardship. Am I close?
The Conservancy is basically 3 elements in which we're doing protection for the watershed.
Okay.
So the first one I'll tell you about is about shoreline stewardship and education through citizen science. So it's really all about
Sounds
education.
pretty fancy.
Well, we have one of our properties, one of our land trusts is the Hill Preserve on Gooley Bay.
Okay.
And that 9-acre cranberry fen is a type of wetland, and it has like over 100 different kinds of plants and trees and species there that are very unique. Wetlands are unique on Lake Superior. And one of the really cool projects that we did was developing a boardwalk so
that you
people
can
could
walk
access.
through the Here's a picture. There's now that fellow's
So
name is Jim.
Jim
Look at
Fitton
Jim.
does the house building program with the Algoma District School Board, and a group of his students last year, when they finished their house building program, came out and helped us develop this. The Great Lakes Guardian Fund gave us some funding.
Are these the students working?
And these are the students working, and they developed and built this boardwalk, and so now we are able to access this wetland in an easy way and also protect the wetland.
Oh.
So it's fabulous. We're going to be adding on to this. This was a recent
Look at,
Sioux
are these people
naturalist.
actually enjoying it now?
And look at the range of ages of the Sioux naturalists there. I love it. This young man,
there's a little kid coming
Christopher
up.
on the right, who's just end of high school years.
Watch this next one. I think there's another picture of a really little kid.
Awesome. This little fella, he was out to
in the next picture, Mike, there's bring up the there. Look at how young they.
He's 3, and he was just so intrigued by the pitcher plants, these insectivorous plants like the sundews. And so we were feeling the plants, looking at the plants, and wonderful naturalist Sue Meads and her husband Bill were there, and they were leading the Sioux naturalists.
Bill with the gray hair
so
there?
Bill is there with the gray hair. Sue here in the foreground with her checkered shirt, and they did the plant survey for this, but it keeps getting added on to. Amazing group of naturalists, and we're always finding something new there.
Those boardwalks are great. So,
Yeah.
And now the flora and the fauna, as I like to say. There's the flora.
So,
what is that?
This is terrible because I've forgotten the name of this particular
You're
plant.
fired from
I'm
the Conservancy, Joanie.
I just
You
got a
know
little
water. You're
brain
not supposed
fart.
to know plants. The next one is a cranberry. We know that there. Now.
There's the cranberries.
Who's puppy?
And our puppy. She's a little.
She a husky?
So these are over a bit of period of time here. You can see that the wetland fills with water, and the berm along the lake shore at Gooley Bay, and then the water drains down inside again. It's because of the water in here that it creates this unique ecosystem that is also quite fragile. And so before we actually were donated this fen by Frank Hilb, who donated it in the name of his father, Francis Hilb. So it's one of our preserves. We were able to, again, we're going to do more work with the White Pines High School this year with their environmental club.
Put them all on the
we're
boardwalk.
This is the group, yeah. And we're going to have the public school, Mountain View Public School. I just met with local teachers to develop outreach to the students to get them into the outdoors. They want to do experiential, place-based education is the buzzword now. Well, but why not?
We're in the middle of it. We live in it.
I know, we live in it, and we live in one of the greatest landscapes on earth, and every kid that grows up here in Sault Ste. Marie region needs to know this story about the beauty and history of our region.
The other thing that we were talking about was the cranberry thing. Do people actually go in there? Can you collect cranberries? Like, can you?
Well,
no, it's not allowed.
Well, we don't. Well, It's okay, but we would like people to respect and not to collect the plants, but we will be touching, feeling, using all of our senses is an important part about engaging all ages of people, but particularly students.
Joanie, when you say that this is land that's protected, that it's a trust.
Yes.
This is land that people have privately owned that they are entrusting to the Conservancy to maintain. Is that, have I got that right?
So when we get into our next segment, we will actually talk specifically about the land trust work that we do. So I use the Hilb Fen as an example of the citizen science shoreline stewardship education piece of the Conservancy's work. So, but we do that work ideally on our land trust properties.
Okay, so we're going to take a break and come back and talk about the land trust and also about the American Friends
of Canadian Land Trusts.
Okay.
Yeah.
More with Joanie McGuffin when we come back, talking about the Lake Superior Watershed Conservancy and all the great work that they're doing and what a beautiful resource it is. It's a natural resource for our community, linking us to so many others around the Great Lakes. Stay tuned. We'll be back with more On Point with Tim Murphy right after this. So, Joanie, tell me what a land trust is.
A land trust, otherwise known maybe more so in Canada as a nature conservancy, is a way to protect lands. It involves a landowner and it involves the land trust. We are a land trust as a charitable organization. We're set up as a charity in Canada and the United States. So there's different ways to accept lands for protection. One particular way is that we're donated a piece of land, like the Francis Hill Preserve. So that was a straight donation. Another property we have is the Dr. Frederick Van Noos Preserve in Prince Township, and that was actually a purchase that we made. We raised the money to purchase that 80-acre piece of property to protect it. Another way of doing it is that it is a conservation easement where we work with a landowner and they maintain, easement is the wrong kind of word, but because it isn't making it public, but the property owner retains the title of the property, but a covenant is put on the property with a set of criteria that protects, let's say, the wetlands, the forest, protects it from being subdivided in the future. And when that property is sold or passed down through the generations, that covenant goes with the property. So it protects it forevermore. It reduces the taxes on the property, but it also protects the conservation values. The final, well, I should say, is that the property outright becomes a property of the Lake Superior Watershed Conservancy through a donation. So maybe I could talk specifically about one of our properties.
We have a picture here, or actually a map. There we go. We're taking a look now at the Gargantua.
The Gargantua Islands off Lake Superior Provincial Park. Of course, they are part of the unceded traditional territory of Batchewana First Nation that goes all the way up the coast from here. But these lands at some point were sold and given over to some Americans who, and the brothers got a tax bill, and so a few years ago the park came to us and said, we thought we owned the islands, but we don't. Is there a way of purchasing from these Americans to bring back into, being along the coast, protected for perpetuity?
Okay, so now, the American Friends is how we do this.
Yes. So we worked with a partner organization, a long name again, American Friends of Canadian Land Trusts. This organization is the only organization that works with land trusts in Canada that are with landowners that are Americans. So Americans owned these islands off the end of the park, and working through American Friends of Canadian Land Trust, there is a special designation under both the IRS in the States and under the Canada Revenue Service. And that special designation gives the American landowner a tax benefit as if they donated the land in the United States, but also they avoid capital gains tax. We just held a workshop at Salzburgerhof a week ago, and it was to invite American landowners along the coast of Lake Superior to understand this very important thing, because it will save them money and it will save conservation lands. Let me give you a quick example.
Okay.
if 4 generations ago property became, you know, you have a cottage on the shores of Batchewana Bay.
Let's show some pictures as you talk about this of the area we're talking about.
Okay.
Go ahead and tell me. So you have a cottage on the shores. Yeah.
You have the cottage on the shores of the lake, and I don't have a particular example here, but if you own that, like several generations ago, it was worth $50,000. Today, it's worth $500,000. $450,000 is the increase in value of that property, and you're going to pay capital gains tax on half of that $450,000. It can work out to be tens of thousands of dollars for unsuspecting Americans who have properties along this coast who think they can just pass down the properties to their children. So American Friends of Canadian Land Trusts, that is one piece of it, but with the Gargantua Islands, we were actually able to work with these American brothers who didn't want the property, they just wanted to sell it now. So in lieu of making $1 million or whatever on selling these islands, they were able to get the tax benefit in the States, they were able to avoid capital gains in Canada, and the all in coming out in the wash, American Friends of Canadian Lands acquired the islands, and for a few years they held them, and last summer in August they were turned over to the Lake Superior Watershed Conservancy. So we manage the property, we pay the taxes on the property, and forevermore, for perpetuity, these islands will remain in their ecologically important state. So it's a big mouthful, but it's a very important work that preservation, and there's many land trusts around Lake Superior that are doing amazing work to protect habitats, to protect lands, but private landowners can become involved in this enterprise to their financial and ecological benefit.
Yeah. And then in the long run, for all of us who live around these areas, it becomes an economical benefit as well, because we're connecting communities and giving people a reason to travel, because even though the lands are preserved and protected, doesn't mean that we can't enjoy them.
And that's the benefit when the Conservancy owns the lands. We are not like stopping people. We have a certain set of criteria for experiencing those lands, and it may be that, you know, there's certain things you can and can't do on the lands, but it's to protect the ecology. But we're also deeply concerned about protecting the cultural intelligence or integrity of these lands too. And working with our First Nations is a very important thing that Conservancy is concerned with.
And developing those trails both on land and in the water, which we're going to cover next.
Yes, and bringing people jobs through interpretive guided experiences.
Beautifully done. All right, so talking jobs, economy, tourism, and of course, land and water preservation and land as well. So stay with us on Point with Joanie McGuffin and more on the Lake Superior Watershed Conservancy right after this. So Joanie, are we talking about over 1,000 kilometers of water trail?
Yes, we are, because the third thing that the Conservancy's done is be involved in eco and cultural tourism through developing 1,000 kilometers of the TransCanada, the Great Trail by TransCanada Trail.
Okay.
So
oh, look, there it is.
This massive trail that we cut the ribbons on for the sesquicentennial last year.
I was there.
The 150th, you were there. You can see the red line around the North Shore linking near Sault Ste. Marie, Prince Township with Thunder Bay. We're also linked to an international water trail with Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan's water trails, which is important economically to remember, because all our water trail and trail users that come from the States will bring economy to our small northern towns. So we developed 16 main access points, and our partners included everybody from Prince Township, the 2 provincial parks on the eastern shore, Mishpacotton, and up around the North Shore, all the communities, 2 lighthouses, the National Park at Puckasaw, and so it was a really good collective and collaborative project that brings people in silos together.
Right.
And so a few just examples of photographs that show the amazing water trail experiences. Batchewana Provincial Park. If we look at the next image, that will be bringing us up to Porphyry Island Lighthouse is one of our partners.
Isn't that beautiful?
And the federal government was divesting themselves of the lighthouses. Canadian Lighthouses of Lake Superior is now starting to protect the lighthouses. 6,500 people came out for the Arts and Residence program. Puckasaw National Park, our largest national park in the province, one of our partners, amazing part of the water trail. Of
Look
course,
at the color of the
most
water.
remote, the most wilderness part of the entire Great Lakes shoreline. Next picture shows us the Thunder Bay waterfront. So we have an industrial story to tell in its relationship with the lake, the distant sleeping giant, but we will do interpretation around the granaries along the Thunder Bay waterfront. Our First Nations partners were central to this project. Beekgang Nishtebeg, which is right between Puckasaw and Marathon up on the North Shore, amazing community. Batchewana First Nation, of course, up this coastline. Chief Dean Sayers speaking at one of our ribbon cuttings about the importance of the Indigenous history underpinning this water trail.
Hey,
to the
look, some of your infrastructure.
Yeah, we put in really great washrooms, the waste facilities, and our universal access docks.
That's the, yes.
Yeah, so people of all abilities, all ages are able to access these resources.
This is
right
a new
from
thing.
Parking to the, this is our new locker out at the Prince Township's
This is
Marina
brilliant.
Park. We're going to do this around the coast. This is the economic tie to the communities.
You can actually lock your canoes up so that you can then go to the community and spend some money.
That's exactly right. So this is the transformation at one of our waterfront development places. It was nothing there.
There was nothing there
and
before.
now we've got picnic tables, benches.
Signage, your
nice
signage.
Our signage is awesome. It's got 3 panels, which I won't go into, but there's a full panel, shows our connection to the whole picture, a safety panel central to the lake.
Is that Diane?
And that's Diane Morrell,
That's my
Spinal
friend
Cord
Diane.
Injury Ontario, amazing partner in developing accessibility from the parking lot to the dock, to the water, for members of our communities who might not otherwise have access to these facilities. And one of the biggest things we're trying to do is engage youth and elders. We need youth for their amazing energy to transform our coast into an interpretive place where we will have guides taking people out on the lands and the waters in all seasons. For Indigenous communities, the water trail is a way to connect them to their stories. So getting elders and youth into the canoes, and we're at Mishipacotton. We've got people who have been lighthouse keepers, real lighthouse keepers, like here on the North Shore, telling the stories and getting those real life stories and then imparting them to the visitors.
Group of 7.
Lauren Harris's grandson. Yeah, this is another research project Gary and I were involved with the painted land and the Group of 7. So just ending here is to say that we need, the Conservancy has recognized putting in water trail access points one thing.
Beautiful canoe.
But you need safe, inclusive, accessible experiences that are interpretive, and that will bring the economy to the coast. And we'll do that through our big canoe experience that we're developing for Lake Superior. So
oh, Joanie, how do we get more information?
Through the Lake Superior Watershed Conservancy.
There it is.
superiorconservancy.org. Please contact us, and we'd love to sign you up to be members, donors, participants, volunteers. See us in the Rotary Parade next weekend, or this coming weekend.
Okay.
July. We're going to have a big canoe there, and come out and talk to us.
Joanie McGuffin, thank you so much for joining us on Point. This has been Joanie McGuffin, the Executive Director of the Lake Superior Watershed Conservancy. I really appreciate your time. It's been a very interesting half hour. We'll be back with more On Point another day, another time. So check out on our channel guide on ONNtv. I'm Tim Murphy. This has been On Point.